Hello everyone. Here show you right here of this right here will be an example right here of a photo ID right here, and it would be an example of my student ID and a picture that I had taken from the school those years ago, and whenever I look at it, it's going to go remind me of a lot of things also, but at the time it sure seems that way that yeah that at the time that when we think about a photo ID, are we necessarily thinking about something taken recently, or if you want to use something that was taken those years ago? And people may think is that if you're going to be looking at a photo ID necessarily, are you going to be maybe thinking about your first year of high school, or maybe your first business job or something like that? So those are things that we can maybe consider also. And whenever you do scan a picture, and then whenever you do have a picture taken, it sure seems that way to where if you for any reason at all that if you think that some of these pictures, because I know with me though that this picture right here would look up real well with a lot of all the other collection of pictures, and talking about with like anybody that might even ask me that that picture that you got, that it's already starting to remind you, like anybody say, your student ID though. But let's just say if you were to use this for like a business account or something like that, really that why would you want to use an old photograph for anything that you're doing, now? And let's just say that if the photo was taken nearly 10 or 15 years ago, why would you want to use it? But like any other accounts would probably say too that well, really just to identify who you are and for what you do, and especially like for most profiles though, that you just for any source of identity purposes that you would use that. And after you do take the picture, and whenever you do find the picture on file, that you would want to say something like, well, this picture right here represents me right here, but it's still that like I think is that if you send pictures, and let's just say that that this was you back whenever you were very young, and let's just say that if you want to go ahead and use this photo, it's like for a training session. So let's just say that if you're going through maybe 3 weeks of training, maybe doing freelancer work, and let's just say that if you want to go ahead and use this photo right here, is like, my early childhood that I only knew so much until I was introduced in this new skill or something like that. So you would say something like that, and like, almost everything else that I'm like, done by the cloud and all that. And so that's why it sure seems that way that when we think about photos though, that you're like, well, really, if you were to use a photograph though, and let's just say if it's the original photo, and let's just say that if you were to say something like, this is me right here, I'm like, look at this picture right here. I'm like, I was a sophomore in high school actually, but why would you really want to use it is like for a business profile ID. And so like you think is that, really does, working, does having a profile, image or a profile ID, does that require you to go ahead and use something from recent, or if you want to look back at nearly 15, 20 years ago at that, something that you probably think is to where really, does that really bring back memories, or does everybody that might even say too that, well, we want to know what your handsome face look like, so it's like, that for any reason at all that you wouldn't want to use an old photograph, so that way people can identify you as if they're able to recognize your picture, and so that's why it sure seems that way that they're looking at this picture right here that you're going to see 2002 right there, and I could probably say that back in 2002 that's whenever I was first introduced to the wireless networking. That's whenever I first got my own first cell phone. Before I even knew what 2G was. that was back in early 2002, whenever I was first introduced to a lot of the cell phone networking. So in case if anybody were to ask me that, if I were to use this as like for my ID, I would probably use it for like if I'm gonna have like an account through a wireless carrier. I would say that this is who I am, and this is what I look like back in the day. That whenever I was first introduced to it, whenever I was first introduced to how it works and how the technology works and getting the training in, that this is what I look like. So I could probably say, besides my student, your GPA scores or anything, that I can use this like for like training images, and like say that you want to go ahead and use student ID as an example for that. And everybody else will probably say too that you in that picture though, that in this picture right here, I probably look like I was at least 15 or maybe 13, 14 years old in that picture though. But still, that like everybody else will probably say too, that you had to be at least 12, 13, just to be able to get a lot of those accounts, even for an iPod and all. But I'm just saying that back in '02 though, that's whenever I was first introduced to most of this. And yeah, that we've come a long ways. About every 5 or 10 years, we come a long ways. But it sure seems that way. That whenever you look at some of these old photographs, though, that you're probably thinking is that, oh, okay, well, has it expired? And you're probably want to know too that how many of us are probably thinking is toward it. That whenever you look at an expired old student ID. And you want to know too is to where well, some may say look at it as like a souvenir, but a lot of those old student photos that I have collected from over the years, it sure seems that way to where if you want to use it, it's like another source of identification. And so it's like say that this source of identification is just to say that I got 2002 on there just to represent as to where that's around the time that I was first introduced to a lot of the wireless carriers. So about how prepaid worked, and then of course how the contract cell phones worked. So it sure seems that way to where that even though if most of those carriers had maybe been around since maybe early in 1996 and maybe early in 1995, that I was first introduced to it. I'm like, that I back in '02 is whenever that was around a time, I just turned 18 years old during a time, and I know most of those carriers would say that you had to be 18 just to be able to sign up, just to be able to be approved qualified for a lot of those plans. So it sure seems that way that, if you're familiar with it, or people might think is to really that if you're under the age of 18 or something like that, and there's other reasons too to where that how come that it took so long just to be able to get introduced to it, and for what you're eligible for, what you could be qualified for, other things like that. But I'm just saying though that look at this picture right here, and people I think is to where you're gonna go ahead and use it as like your profile ID. Like say that look at that handsome man. But other than that, it sure seems that way is toward it knowing about it's like set for photo identification.